Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. Now, if you have any questions throughout the session, if you're joined on Zoom, just look at the top of the bottom of the screen. Wherever your Zoom controls are, you should see a little button that says Q&A. Click on that, and then you can type in your question, hit submit, and I'll get to those at the end of the session. If you're watching live on YouTube, just use the live chat function, wherever it happens to be on the device that you're using. Ask your questions there. So my name is Jason Gabrenas. If I can get this to advance, there we go. My name is Jason Gabrenas. I'm one of Snap-on's national diagnostic technical trainers. Been in the training department the last 9 years or so, traveling around North America, helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple years as a diagnostic sales rep with Snap-on. So I had about 30 different Snap-on franchisees I worked with, as well as the shops that they serviced, in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. Then before I did that, it was 8 years at Subaru. So worked at a Subaru dealership, and over time, I guess, just became that default diag guy in the shop. Always ended up with drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type problems that would come into my bay. And before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs, then a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. So what we're going to talk about tonight is going to be tire pressure monitoring. So TPMS system operation and testing. So TPMS stands, of course, for tire pressure monitoring system. And that's been standardized across the industry, at least in North America, and Europe too, for a good at least 10 years or so. So let's talk about a little bit of history. Where did we start seeing these tire pressure monitoring systems on vehicles? So starting way back in 1986, Porsche decided to start using it on some of their vehicles. So the first production vehicle to use tire pressure monitoring system was the Porsche 959 in 1986. Now that used two sensors mounted 180 degrees apart on special holes in the valley of the wheel. So they had special, looked like stacks of poker chips, these transmitters, and they transmitted at a 433 megahertz frequency. Now just kind of remember that for later, because that comes into play. You get codes and data from the scan tool, and it was also used for 928 models from 1990 through 1994. So that was our first production vehicle using TPMS. Then in 1997, we had the first U.S. domestic production vehicle with TPMS on it. So it was a 1997 Corvette C5, and it used a Schrader manufactured sensor. So you can see the sensor right here. And it was the first OE TPMS over in the States. Also with this, you had to activate it using this magnet over here. The magnet would go over the top of that, and that's what would turn it on to flip the switch, to so to speak, and turn it on. So vehicle manufacturers also have no standard tire pressure monitoring systems, and it's still pretty hit or miss, and everybody's a little bit different the way they approach it. Either a simple dash light on higher end cars could have each tire shown on the driver information center as well. There is some standardization with the lights now, but you'll see different procedures in order to program them. We'll walk through the different procedures as we go here. Then around the turn of the century, 2000, they came up with the TREAD Act and a national recall system. So a large U.S. vehicle manufacturer recalled a lot of their vehicles. And if you're around back then, you know who I'm talking about, but I can't say it, but you know who it is if you were around back then. A total of 14.4 million tires affected, 279 accident deaths, and basically was boiled down to a discrepancy between the tire placard and what the tire could actually handle as far as pressure. And the government got involved and signed the Federal Trade Act November 1st of 2000. So the law intends to increase consumer safety by mandating TPMS on all vehicles under 10,000 pounds. So starting in 2004, it was assigned to the NHTSA, so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the U.S., to notify the driver when the tire is below 25% by the dashboard warning light within 20 minutes of occurring. And I think if you have driven one of these vehicles where your tire goes low, it's definitely within 20 minutes. It's usually spot on. I know I ran over a shear pin or something in a parking lot and got stuck in my tire. Then immediately my tire light came on. So I knew I had a problem on the vehicle right then and there. So it's definitely faster than 20 minutes, but the standard 20 minutes. And then they also had a dash warning light requirement to go along with this. So it had to match the placard. So a solid light on the tire pressure monitor would be the tire pressure detected under or over 25% of the OE door placard value. So, if you open the door, there's a little placard in there and it'll tell you what the tire size is supposed to be, load ratings, and pressures on there. Or if you see it flashing for 60 seconds, then a solid light, that's at least one sensor isn't communicating with the vehicle. And that could be dead battery, damaged sensor, incorrect relearn, additional tire pressure monitoring component failure, like a module, wheel initiator, ECU, something else wrong with the system if you have the flashing and then solid light. So just a plain solid light means my tire pressure too high, too low. Flashing and then solid means I have some other sort of issue with the system. So here's a high-level overview of a tire pressure monitoring system. You see we have one of the valves here. So that just replaces the standard valve stem in the tire. And then they are essentially radio transmitters. Well, they are radio transmitters. There's a little battery in there. And they read the pressure, and then they transmit that pressure over radio waves to the receiver in the vehicle. Usually the manufacturer has it somewhere kind of centrally located. So it makes it easier for all the sensors to be able to transmit to that one place. So like one isn't way further away than another, just to kind of make it a little bit easier to transmit and receive those signals. Now they do have batteries in them, like I said, and if you're lucky, they say maybe a good 8-10 years out of them. If you're lucky, I've seen them start to go 5-6 years, and then you'll just get a dash light. You'll have to replace the sensor. Now, as far as the sensors go, there's really three main types that are used in the industry. Some are more common than others. The first one was banded, and Ford used that. It was kind of like a rubber band or a metal band around the inside of the tire. And then you had the sensor mounted to that as it would spin. It'd be kind of in the middle of the tire there. It was discontinued on most Fords from 2009 to 2010. Not very common out there anymore. Then we have the clamp-in sensor. So they are clamped in through the tire rim using this screwed-on nut right here. So you can see the black section, that is the seal that goes on the inside of the tire. And then this nut goes on the outside of the tire over the valve stem. That clamps it in between the outside and the inside, and that's what holds it in place. Now, these are very susceptible to salt, sand, stuff on the road that can contaminate it. So I'll tell you, I live in the Northeast of the U.S., and when I worked at Subaru, the first couple of years that Subaru had TPMS, they had this style. And man, it was just a nightmare trying to get anything done with these because they would just corrode. You couldn't get them apart. Half the time you had to cut them off. Oh man, it was a royal pain. So luckily they have not really standardized on this. They move more towards the one on the right here, which is the snap-in style. So the rubber part looks very much like the normal rubber valve stem that you would see on a non-TPMS vehicle. It's just got a little bit extra metal down the bottom in order to mount the sensor. So there's my sensor there. I got a little screw that goes in and holds it there. Also with these clamp-in ones, by the way, in order to tighten that down, you do need special tooling just to make sure you don't over torque it, under torque it. It needs to be torqued to the right spec. There are special tools for that. We sell a special socket set for that as well. And then, like I said, these snap-in ones, good for winter salt regions. So if you have anywhere where there's salt on the road, these can be easily replaced and they aren't as susceptible to corrosion like the clamp-in ones. So around 2007 through 2020 and beyond, Schrader came out with this rubber snap-in valve, and most of the sensors in the industry nowadays are some sort of variable of this. They might not all be Schrader, but they are some sort of a version of this. We're going to pull this through. There's a special tool that kind of goes on there and it pulls it through. And then in this case, we also can see a special torque socket screwdriver type thing for the torques that goes on the end. And then here, there's also a like a bit for the Schrader valve itself. In order to deflate tires on a TPMS, you want to pull the Schrader valve out. So there's a way to do that as well. All sorts of special tools for it. With these rubber snap-in, two-piece, low cost, easy to install. 75 to 80%, as I said, 75 to 80% of the market is a rubber snap-in at this point. And then all those below are the ones that they use. You see they look fairly similar, except on the inside, they look a little bit different the way they mount to the sensor itself. Then in 2008, the U.S. was now at 100% of US cars and light trucks sold in the United States had tire pressure monitoring systems on them. Also think about this. So 04, we had a few, and you can see how much in the market it was up until 2012. So all of these sensors could be failing for battery. They need a battery replacement, right? So sensor frequencies could be either 315 or 433 megahertz. 315 megahertz is used in US cars and light trucks, so that's a standard. Some OEs offer 315 or 433, like a Ram 1500 is that way as well. So in 2009, Europeans started getting on board. So the European Union had enacted TPMS legislation as well. Same type of thing. EU mandates OE on all vehicles. In this case, they have direct measurement systems at 433 megahertz. So US cars 315, European cars 433. Higher speed German vehicles will use more clamp-in metal valves just so we don't have to worry about things flying apart, I guess, under speed. They also have a tighter dash light spec. So instead of 25% cold in the US, it's 20% of warm in Europe. They also allow a second set of tire pressure monitor sensors for winter tires. So if you switch between winter tires and summer tires, you can just swap the wheels out and you can have the tire pressure monitors programmed to the vehicle as well. Now, we talked about direct measurement a little bit earlier. So 94% of the US market is going to be that direct measurement. So that would be the clamp-in valves, the snap-in valves, directly measuring the pressure inside the tire. Now, there are some vehicles, it's like mostly Audi VW, that use indirect measurements. So what that does is utilizing the wheel speed sensor. It measures and compares the wheel speeds as to what they should be versus the miles an hour going down the road. And it's going to turn at a different speed if the tire pressure is low. So then that's how it would alert you in that case, depending on how fast the tire is. Also in 2009, VDO introduced a multi-application ready sensor. Now there's many brands on the market, but VDO was the first one out to the market. Gives you 6 or 7 part numbers, should cover most of the OEs. So this made it easier for the aftermarket shops where you could just buy 1 or 2 different part numbers and you're covered for the majority of the vehicles that you're going to work on. You don't have to buy a Honda sensor or an Acura sensor or a Nissan sensor or Audi. Well, Audi doesn't use a sensor, but you get the gist. You don't have to buy every manufacturer's different sensor, and the cost can be down as well. So it stacks all of the OE protocols on one single sensor chip, and it just allows it to be programmed. Now, all of our TPMS tools since TPMS 3 have been able to clone sensors. You can also clone factory sensors. You can copy the ID numbers and such off of the factory sensors and clone it into a blank sensor, or you can do whichever you need to do. So if you have a blank sensor in there, you're already programmed, you can take it off and can replace it as well. So programmable sensors, they're out there. They're pretty common nowadays. I think there's like a couple dozen companies that make them. But like I said, VDO is like one of the first ones, just to make it easier on everybody in the aftermarket. So that is an opportunity for you out there. Also, the other fun thing is there's no standard service relearns even to this day. Depends on the manufacturer and how they decided they wanted to do it. Here's a little quick reference guide here. It tells you whether or not the sensor's in the tire or whether it's indirect. When I need to recalibrate or relearn, is it after the tire rotation? Is it after tire sensor replacement? Most of the time, yes. Or is it after tire pressure adjustment? Some manufacturers mandate that you reset the system after even adjusting the tire pressure. I don't know what threshold of tire pressure you need to adjust it by, but they say after tire pressure adjustment, you need to do it as well. So for example, we're going to walk through a few of these as well. So GM has 33 different procedures, and they are generally a stationary procedure where the vehicle is going to be sitting in the bay. I'm going to use a tool or a scan tool to go through and set up this sensor. BMW has 15 different procedures, and they're all automatic. So it's a different way of accessing the system, however that is. And then usually it's just drive the vehicle down the road. Nissan has 1 procedure. Actually, technically, I would call it 2 procedures because we can do it with the scanner and a TPMS tool, or with the scanner and without a TPMS tool. So we can do it either way. So I say it's 2 procedures, but technically, I guess it's 1 procedure. And then as far as coverage out there, so on the vehicle market, About 35% of them are that stationary one. So that's between GM and whoever else has a stationary. Auto relearn is about 38% of the market. And then using an OBD2 scan tool, it's going to be 27% of the market. Most times, when it comes to OBD2 sensors, it's 27% of the market. Most of the time, that's going to find that in Asian vehicles, just because that seems to be how most of them have adopted the way to do it. So let's talk about a few different reset procedures. If you own a Snap-on scan tool, in the Snap-on scan tools has pretty much all of the current tools on the market out there are going to have the quick lookups function available on there. That's been on the tool for probably the past 5 years. And we've got quick lookups in here. And what this gives us is some information real quick. First one there, though, is tire and wheel service. So that's going to have all of our tire pressure monitoring system information, general tire information, and so on. So if we go in there, specific to the vehicle, so we got a 2018 GMC Acadia loaded in here. And it's going to give us our TPMS reminder reset. So it's going to set the tire pressure of all wheels. We're going to set the parking brake, place the vehicle power mode and on-run start, and then make sure the tire pressure info display option is turned on. The info display is on the driver information center. It can be turned on and off through the settings menu. Use the 5-way driver information center control on the right side of the steering wheel to scroll to the tire pressure screen under the info page. Press and hold the SEL button located in the center of the 5-way control. The horn sounds twice to signal the receivers in relearn mode. So we're doing this all without a scan tool. We're using the steering wheel controls on the driver information center. It'll say tire learning active on the screen. You're going to start with the driver's side front tire. And I'll say pretty much every manufacturer has it this way. You're going to start with the driver's side front. You're going to work your way clockwise around the vehicle. So driver's front, passenger rear, driver rear. And then you place a sensor activation tool against the tire sidewall near the valve stem, then press the button to activate the sensor. You'll hear the horn chirp, and that'll confirm the sensor ID code has been matched to this tire and the wheel position. After a horn chirp is sounded, proceed to the next 3 sensors in the following order. Once again, right front, right rear, left rear. After left rear sensor has been learned, the horn sounds 2 times, and that'll tell us that we're done. And then you press stop to turn the ignition off. So that's all done essentially inside the vehicle. We'd have to go around the outside with the activation tool. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. There's a ton of different tools on the market. It's basically an electromagnet, sends a little signal to it and tells it, hey, transmit. And then it'll transmit the signal to the module when it's in a learn mode. So that was GM, right? We said there's 33 different stationary procedures for GM. How about BMW? So 2018 BMW 330. Going to go using iDrive, which is their driver information system, basically. So we're going to go to My Vehicle, Vehicle Status, then Reset Tire Pressure Monitor. Going to start the engine, but do not drive off. Going to reset the tire inflation pressure, perform reset, and drive away. The wheels are displayed in gray, and the following is displayed, resetting tire pressure monitor. So once the wheels are gray and it says it's resetting, we know it's in relearn mode. After driving faster than 19 miles an hour for a short period, the set tire inflation pressures are accepted as reference value. Reset is completed automatically while driving, and you may interrupt the strip at any time. You may continue, and the reset resumes automatically. After a successfully completed test, the wheels in the control display are shown in green, and tire pressure monitor active. See label for recommended pressures is displayed. So it'll tell you on the screen what you have going on. All right, so that was a stationary. This one's an automatic, and then we also have a couple different ones. So this is on a 2018 Dodge Ram, or Ram, I guess. In this case, reset procedure, there's no content available because they didn't publish a reset procedure for this vehicle. So what we want to do is we want to go in functional reset. And this is a security link function, by the way. So you want to make sure your scan tool is on Wi-Fi. You want to make sure, in this case, this is through FCA. So you want to make sure you are set up with auto off through Chrysler. And then also make sure your tool credentials are in the security link section of your Snap-on profile as well. And then we would just hit continue, and then it gives us our sensor programming. So programming left front, sensor ID, right front, left rear, right rear, and also this allows us to program the spare tire as well. Some manufacturers do, some manufacturers don't. Just depends on the manufacturer. So this function should be used to write the left front sensor ID in the ECU. So that's the one we chose the first one. We hit continue, and it's going to tell us what the current sensor ID is in the vehicle. So in this case, it's 030303. Make sure you have the 8-character sensor ID available. It can be found on the tire sensor label, so on the sensor itself and also on the box. you should have an 8-digit code. So we're going to go in here, we're going to hit edit, and then we can type it in. In this case, I just did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hit OK. It's going to tell you which characters are which, so make sure they're correct. Hit continue, and then it'll tell you if it's successful or not. All right, so that's why there wasn't a procedure in the scan tool, or at least procedure published by the manufacturer, because we need to do it in the scan tool only, Here's another example on the Nissan. Remember how we said Nissan has different ways to do it. So we can do it with the transmitter activation tool, and then we can do it without the transmitter activation tool. So there's a couple different ways to do it. With the activation tool, I put it in learn, and then I go around my different tires and learn them. If I don't have the tool, it'll tell me where to set the tire pressures. So each tire has to have a different set pressure. The vehicle will read what pressure is what, and then it'll understand, well, okay, so the front left, I'm reading this tire is 36, so that must mean it's on the front left of the vehicle. Also want to make sure you have a good tire gauge, by the way. I didn't mention that earlier, but working on vehicles at TPMS, some of them can get a little picky, so you want to make sure you have a good tire gauge, preferably a digital tire gauge. They're pretty readily available these days. So in order to do this, we're going to go back into functional reset again. And then it gives us the option with the tool and without the tool. Now, once again, I mentioned the tool earlier. There are multiple ways to activate using a tool. The two current tools that we have is the TPMS 4 and the TPMS 5. And you'll see on the TPMS 4, I got this little, looks like a Wi-Fi antenna. It's not actually Wi-Fi, that's the activator. And then I have a button right here to activate. So all you'd have to do is take this TPMS 4, bring it over, put that antenna part on the wheel or the tire right near the stem, valve stem. Press this button, works. On this one, on the TPMS 5, it's a little more specific walkthrough, so you can go into TPMS and use the function that way. And it still has the antenna right there. I think you just kind of hit yes instead of having a special button right for it. So in this case, this is going to show you first without the tool. So this process will only work with existing sensors. So if I replace the sensor, I have to use the tool. Otherwise, if I'm just doing a tire rotation, I can do it this way. If a new sensor is installed, the procedure requiring the tool must be used. Hit continue. And it's in this case, it says adjust these pressures accordingly. So left front, right front, etc. Once we're done, go to the next message. I'm going to select continue to start the test. The tire pressure light in the dash will start flashing. Key on engine running. Drive the vehicle 5 to 15 minutes until test completed is displayed. Vehicle must be driven. TPMS light will go out. If test fails to complete, exit test and attempt to test again, following the instructions in detail. So if it doesn't work, more than likely you missed the tire pressures. All right, we can hit continue and we're done. Now, how about other related scanner operations that we may need with tire pressure monitoring vehicles as well? So we're going to go back into that 2018 GMC Acadia, and you'll see I have in my functional test on the tire pressure monitor, I have a tire type and pressure selection. So I can go in there. I'm going to choose my tire type, whatever that happens to be, my load range or my P metrics. It's going to tell us what the tire pressure is currently. So it's set to 26 PSI. We can click edit. And then it'll allow us to choose from this list of pretty much anywhere from 26 to 95 PSIs. A couple that skips over. I don't know why, but it's just how the manufacturer has, like you can't do 31 PSI, but probably not very common anyway. So you can go anywhere from 26 to 95 PSI. So if you change the tires, you change the load rating, you can change it so your TPMS isn't constantly going off because it thinks the tire pressure is too low or too high. So this allows you to change the placard. You hit continue. I'm going to choose 44 PSI. It's going to tell you it's there. You hit continue and you're set. Also, quick reminder that motorcycles nowadays have TPMS in them as well. So things like Honda, BMW, Indian, they have TPMS as part of the bike as well. So oftentimes you're going to go in and it's going to be something in the driver information display to set it up. And then you just have to set the tire pressures. Half as many tires than on a car. So it's going to take you half as long, right? But just remember that that is a possibility. If you get a bike in, that a bike could have tire pressure monitoring systems on them as well. And now after, remember how the law said anything under 10,000 pounds? Now we have over 10,000 pounds that's required as well. So you're going to see it on dually trucks. as well as 2019 and 2020 OE trailers now have TPMS as well. So there's a setting over here that says for trailer tire pressure, and we can see the trailer tire pressures right there as well. So there are factory options that have TPMS, or at least allow you to connect the TPMS to the vehicle on the trailer. So pretty much nowadays, anything with a tire that's connected to a vehicle is probably going to have TPMS with it. So it's definitely something, if you're not involved in it yet, definitely something to get into, because pretty much anytime you do it, just even a standard tire rotation, you have to do it. Repair a tire. Like I said, all of these sensors, the batteries are dying over time. You know, you'd be lucky to last 8-10 years. So if you haven't jumped in the TPMS, it's actually very easy to work on. You really only need a couple special tools, and you can be in that business if you're not already working on those in the shop as it is. Let's go through live on the scan tool now. Walk through a couple more examples of things that we can see. Let's see, what do I want to pull out first? Let's go to this Jeep. 2019 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Let's see what we can find. Oh, security link. Unlocked my vehicle. Okay, there we go. So you know we have our usual code scan, engine, etc. So we can come down here. Usually, if the vehicle does not have a tire pressure monitor like this one does, usually the functions are also going to be in the body control monitor. So we're going to go tire pressure monitor and see what we can do here. Oh yeah, this one is in a different spot. So we have codes and data. So in that case, we can check the codes, we can check the data. It's going to tell us barometric pressure, tire altitude pressures, whether we have a duplicate sensor ID, missing sensor IDs, different tires as well. So we can see the different sensors, the different IDs. If an ID is missing, then it's not programmed in a vehicle, right? You can sell that pretty easily. Some manufacturers also will give us battery. In this case, we don't, but the TPMS tools, TPMS 4 and the TPMS 5, if you scan the vehicles, they will show battery level. Is it good or is it low? So let's look in the body control module on this one as well. So I think it might be in here. Let's see. System. There we go. Update pressure thresholds inside there, inside the body control module. So this procedure updates the tire pressure monitoring system's load inflation pressure stored in the body control module, and then the tire pressure monitor present. Use the cold tire inflation pressure for the front and rear tires listed on the tire, and loading information label located on the inside driver's door or driver's door jamb. Continue. It's going to give us our current pressures. Hit continue. And then it's going to say select the front pressure. So it can go anywhere from 28 to 80. So let's do like 36. And then it says select the rear. Now the screen changes so fast you can't really tell, so you got to make sure you read there. And let's set the rears to 38. Maybe. It's going to write the values in. It's a simple program. Successfully updated, and we're done. Now, of course, this is going to show me dummy data on there, but you would see where it is currently set on a real vehicle. So that is Jeep. Let's change to a different vehicle. Let's go to my good old GMC. So on this one, I want to show you the service reset. So if we go into quick lookups and we go into tire and wheel service. Okay. So you see there's my TPMS reminder reset right there. Also in here, inside this tire service, we have remove and repair. So it's going to tell us how to remove and repair the tire pressure monitor. So we can see that, different fastener cautions and how to mount it. You generally do want to pull it through. I personally probably wouldn't have the sensor connected to it at the time, just in case something snaps or broke or something like that. So we have that available. And then we have tire fitment as well. So it's going to tell you, okay, so if it's front wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, and then what's the rating? What's my standard tire? What are my optional tires? And then what are my inflation pressures, front and rear? What are my wheel nut torque? So that's important to know too. Wheelbase, rim size, and bolts and numbers. So those are all 6-bolt 120 millimeter spacing. Also, always refer to the vehicle placard in anyways, and then you can go to functional reset as well, which will bring me right into my tire pressure monitor system. And I can do functional resets, can do my tire type and pressure. So once again, it's going to go into the different loads. There we go, hit continue. And then rear tires, same deal. Go in there, hit continue. And it's going to say there's my tire selections. And then we're done. Easy enough, right? Also, there's output controls in here, so that's where I can go into learn mode. So it'll just go into TPM learn mode. Ignition key must be on, and then we're going to use the activation tool, like TPMS 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, to activate the sensors. It's going to tell us how to do that. And then in this case, we can just go into learn mode. We don't have to use the driver information center. We can just say learn mode and go, and it allows us to learn. Okay, so that's that. Let's go into this. The Camry was interesting. Okay, so we'll go into the Camry. Actually, I want to go in here and quick lookups again. Tire and wheel service. XLE, we'll call it. Okay, so we'll need to be initialized when tires are rotated. Set the air pressure, turn the ignition switch off, connector scan tool, and transmit them to the wheel. So we need to perform a transmitter ID registration. So we go into functional reset, tire ID registration right there. Function is used to register tire pressure transmitter IDs, key on, engine off. It's going to set with the main set of tires. Select to register the main set of tires for the vehicle. You must have each tire pressure sensor ID ready before continuing. So here's another one where I need to program them in separately. So I have 4 unregistered IDs that it senses. Tire sensor ID for this vehicle is 7-character identifier. Scroll for more instructions. If you acquire the IDs from the data display, please ignore deleting 0 when entering the registration of each sensor. So we displayed a 0 at the beginning. We'll just enter 9F. And if it's 0 there, double zeros, we have the first 0. Good to know. So for sensor ID, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 6, 5. Oh, I can't do that. I need one more, 7. That's fine. It's got to be 7. Okay. Enter that. Continue. And then so on through the second one. Going to confirm. Third one. Confirm. Fourth one. Confirm. Registration complete. So depending on the manufacturer, you want to read ahead and you want to make sure, okay, do I need to use a scan tool for it? Do I need to have my tire IDs ready? So like on this Toyota or on a Dodge or something like that. Do I just need to drive it down the road like a BMW that we saw in the example? Or do I need that special TPMS tool? And I'd recommend having one of those anyways, just because almost every vehicle on the market has tire pressure monitoring system now. And if you don't work on them yet, you're going to need to work on them at some point, I would imagine. And with the ease of use of these tools, it makes no sense to send it down the road when you can easily do it in-house and it's not too terribly pricey to get started and get going. And it can also add to your bottom line, right? That's what we all want. We have nice profitable shops, nice efficient shops. All right, so that is TPMS. That's my time for tonight. Let's talk about next week. So this is an all new class. Next week's an all new class. The next 4 weeks after this will be all new classes. We have 5 new classes that we're starting with tonight. Next week is our auxiliary emissions operating and testing. So these are kind of I just kind of made this as like a kind of a catch-all of other things that really there's really not a lot to them that we would need to dedicate an entire half hour to or so. So it's going to be like EGR valves, tumble generator valves, variable intake runners, that sort of thing that also affect emissions and drivability on the vehicle. But they're just kind of not every vehicle has them. Some of them are a little bit different than others. We'll talk about things like that, air pumps, etc. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Auxiliary emissions operation and testing. Same time, same place, 6 to 9 Eastern. If you want to join me on Zoom, go to snapon.com/OT. The 6 p.m. Eastern class goes over to YouTube as well. So youtube.com/Snap-on Diagnostics. Thanks for the likes on the stream. If you would, please give the stream a thumbs up. It helps with that silly algorithm there. And also, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not subscribed, we definitely appreciate that. Doesn't cost you a thing. and then you can get notified anytime we put out any new streams or content. There's plenty of new things coming down the road too. So just be aware of that. There is much more coming, definitely on YouTube, if not anywhere else. Also, if you want to see any of our other previous topics we've covered in this live stream series, been doing it for a couple of years now. We have 42. This is episode 43 right here. So things like code-based diagnostics, data bus testing. We did a component testing series last summer, automatic transmissions, et cetera, et cetera. So a bunch of different topics. They're all in the half-hour, 40-minute range, depending on the topic. And they're all pretty well similar to this class. So if you want to check them out, definitely they are available to check out. Let's go to Q&A real quick. Don't seeing some comments on YouTube, nothing on Zoom. So if you are on Zoom and you do have a question, just make sure you hit that Q&A button and type in your question there, and I'll get to those. Also want to say hi to Ephraim and everybody watching with Ephraim out in Sterling, Virginia tonight. Thanks for joining. Hopefully you're getting something out of this, and I'm sure Ephraim's got a lot to talk about after we're done, or maybe he's got a little to talk about, but I'm sure he's got something to talk about after we're done here. I also want to make sure I remind you that my buddy Al also does training classes 3 nights a week. So he does Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it is scan tool specific training. So we're talking Apollo on Monday, Zeus is on Wednesday, and Triton is on Thursday. Very comprehensive class, very thorough, well thought out class. So it's going to be everything from, let's make sure your Wi-Fi is on tool, because that's very important nowadays. Make sure the Wi-Fi is working. Let's set up your free Snap-on Cloud account. We can walk through how to do that. And then we'll walk through code to completion. We'll walk through some quick lookups, code to completion on fast track intelligent diagnostics as well. How does it help me as a technician diagnose cars easier and faster, and so on. So that's about an hour. Each class is about an hour there. On Wednesday and Thursday, since the Zeus and the Triton also have meter and scope functions, after a 5-minute break after that first hour, he also goes through the scope and meter functions on that tool, some real world examples, a couple things that you could probably use in the shop the next day with your guided component test meter and your scope. So definitely a great class. It's about 2 hours long on those Wednesday, Thursday nights. Only on Zoom though, so you can go to snapon.com/OT and check that out at your leisure. Looks like we got one come in from Ephraim. Let's see. How does a car get duplicate sensor IDs and how to fix? So that's a good question. I don't know how it would do it by itself without thinking about it, unless I had a defect in the system somehow, or if I program the same sensor twice. That could happen too. Because you have to go around the vehicle and maybe you didn't notice that the lights, because it's like on a Subaru, for example. On a Subaru, for example, the lights flash, but you don't hear anything. So if you don't see the lights flash on my driver's front, you might think, well, that didn't work. Let's do it again. And then it'll think, so the driver's side has this ID, and then the passenger side front would have the same ID because you did it twice in a row. So I'd say the easiest way to fix, I'm suspecting that's probably how it happens. So the easiest way to fix it is just do a relearn on the car and just make sure you're hitting every tire once, because or your finger could slip. It's all sorts of different things that could happen with it. So if your finger slipped and you hit it twice by accident too, that could happen, I suppose. The car isn't that smart. The car is smart enough to know what you're telling it. So if I'm telling it I'm on the left front, it's going to trust you and say, all right, you're on the left front, right? So definitely, hopefully that answers your question. Thank you coming from Ephraim's class. So thanks for that. All right, we got some activity on the YouTube. Let's see, the Winton, hello. Abel, thank you for joining us as always. Alexander Davila, thank you for joining us. Nick, always glad to see you from the UK. I know you love your Zeus. Hey, checking in from Connecticut. Hey, I'm in Connecticut too. Welcome, fellow nutmegger, I guess. I saw an argument on the internet the other day about what do we call people in Connecticut? Connecticans? No, we don't call them that. Best thing we could come up with is nutmeggers. But yeah, fellow nutmegger. Let's see, Hussein, thanks for joining us. Charles, I find the clamp-in specs are too tight and then you can't service. Yeah, the manufacturers, I think, torque them down too hard from the factory. And then if you can throw some salt in there, even rain, right? Even getting water in there doesn't help. You get some water, you get some sand. It doesn't really matter. They're just way too tight. Nestor says he always forgets. I don't know what you're forgetting, but hey, always good to check the reference information. The Winton, thank you for joining us as well. Charles says the special tool is a hammer and a nail pry bar for removing clamp pins. Yeah, I guess that is one way to get them out. And the battery is like a watch battery molded into the plastic. They don't want that. Yeah, so you can't replace the battery. Can't replace the battery in those. So they're just going to die, and they're just going to die out. You got to replace them. The batteries are non-replaceable. You got to replace the sensor. Now, as we also said in the material that, hey, you don't necessarily need to replace it with an OE sensor now, because there are tons of different sensors on the market out there that are programmable. There's just a blank sensor. You take the information off of one, you put it on the other. And he also says the sensors are pretty cheaply made. Wouldn't trust the rechargeable, that's for sure as well. And, I wouldn't just throw a watch battery in there anyways, because probably not going to last. Keith asked, does Snap-on have a scan tool that can do most tire sensors? Yes, all of our scan tools, from the Ethos up through the Zeus and Verus, will be able to do the most of the tire sensors that are out there. There are some weird ones that are in maybe some luxury brands that we don't cover on a scanner, but that'll be covered inside the tire pressure tool. So things like, I know we got like Tesla, right? We don't cover a scan tool with the Tesla because Tesla doesn't have an engine, and they're all proprietary about all their information anyways. So we don't cover it in the scan tool, but we cover it in the tire pressure monitoring tool because they do have tire pressure monitoring systems. So the one way to get the most tire pressure coverage would be the TPMS 5, because it does both with the scan tool and without. Doesn't necessarily need a standalone scan tool, but all the Snap-on scan tools will cover the same systems on there as well. Oh, we got some questions flying fast and furious now. Ephraim's class wants to know the next time I'll be live in their area. I don't know. I'm getting asked that quite a bit since everybody's starting to kind of open up and starting to travel there. But I'm not sure. Since you're not that far, they might let me drive down there. Getting an airplane ticket right now through the company is like an act of Congress right now. So if I have to fly, I probably can't. But if I can drive, I probably can't. So we'll have to have Ephraim talk with his regional manager and see if maybe I might be able to come out there at some point. But I do enjoy that you come to Ephraim's class and then you dial me in. So at least it's kind of like I'm there. I know it's not the same, but it's the best we can do right now under the circumstances. And Gerardo on Zoom also says Lexus and Toyota are a pain. Yes, they can. I know I've had definitely some issues with some Lexuses and some Nissans as well with with the different scan tools there. So let's see what else we got. Let's see. Gerardo also says with Lexus and Toyota TPMS, we did a Lexus put an aftermarket and it didn't do the job very well. I guess that might just be with the aftermarket sensors. They might just not like it. As far as cloning the sensor, I mean, all you're really doing is take the information off of one and pasting it into another. So unless you had a damaged OE sensor, then I guess that might not work as well for you. Let's see. All right, looks like that clears the board. So with that, I'd like to, I got another one. Let's see, Gerardo says thank you. Thank you, Gerardo. All right, so with that, looks like we are clear. I'd like to thank everybody for taking a little bit time out of your day, time out of your week to come spend with me. Hopefully we learned a little bit more about TPMS and picked up a few tips and tricks to help us with diagnostics with TPMS as well. Hopefully you can join me next week for auxiliary emission systems. With that, enjoy the rest of your week. If you're in the United States, it is a long weekend this weekend as well. So hopefully you can enjoy some time with the family. And hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday with auxiliary emission systems. With that, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good night. Take care.